All right, everybody. I'm here with Brian McNamara, Saratoga High School class of 2000, right, Brian?
2001.
2001. Okay, sorry.
Yep.
So Brian was a teammate of mine, and then he ran at Tufts after, and hopefully he'll be able to talk a little bit about his experience there as well as his post-collegiate running experience, because
Sure.
Brian had a lot of success running after college in the Boston area. So, Brian, first, can we start off with what are some of your highlights from your high school running career at Saratoga?
Sure. So just to put this in context for the guys on the team, so I competed from seventh grade to my senior year, which was fall of 1995 through 2001, which makes me 37 years old. I'm sure the guys think that's ancient. So a couple highlights from my high school career. I think the top highlight has to be my senior year in cross country. After just the team improving incrementally each year, we were actually the number one ranked team in New York State, and we were the Federation meet champions. And back then, all the top teams ran at Feds. So like now where some teams skip it, like, every top Class A team and the better teams from Class B and C and some of the Catholic schools and stuff like that all ran. And so we were able to win that Federation meet for the first time since, I think, the late 80s, when it was 87 or 88.
Right.
Which was a really big deal and just a sort of a culmination of my high school cross-country career for sure.
Brett, I talked about this with Sean, so I think the guys might be interested to hear your perspective. Can you talk about how the week before you ran states and you guys underperformed,
So bad.
right? And you didn't have a very good meet. So can you talk a little bit about like dealing with the disappointment of not running well at states after running great at sectionals, off day at states, and then coming back and running well enough to win Federation the week after?
Sure. So maybe some context I think is helpful. So we had basically won every single meet we competed at that season in fall of 2000. We lost a single dual meet to Bethlehem by 1 point, which pissed us off because we thought we could have an undefeated season.
Right.
But in some ways it actually helped motivate us a little bit. So we won suburbans, we won sectionals. We went on.
Sorry to interrupt you, Brett, but maybe even more context. Section 2 was loaded that year, right? Our team, Bethlehem and Shenendehowa were all in the top 4, I think, of the state at one point.
Oh, yeah.
5. Yeah. Section 2 was very, very strong that year.
And just like it is now, like if you place second at sectionals, you're not running at the state meet, but you could be the third best team in the state.
Yep.
Right? Or even
that
the second best team in the state, theoretically.
Right.
So we won suburbans, we won sectionals. I was our second runner at both of those meets. And then going into state meet, it was somewhere in, I think, near Utica.
Yeah, New Hartford, right? It was like a mud pit.
Yeah, and it had rained for like the week leading up to the race. So the course was just an absolute mess. I think the fastest guy's time on the course was like 17:10 or something, right? And these are guys who would have run like 14:40 at SPAC.
Right.
So anyway, long story short, we had a bad day. We got cut off at the start. 3 of us fell during the race and just we were just covered in mud. It was a mess. And so afterwards we were like, man, that wasn't so great. And the scores got posted somewhere. Not like now where they're like up on Twitter instantly, right? Like we had printouts back then. So anyway, I think we got third at Class A states, which was like a big kick in the shin because we were, and at least we thought we were the best team in New York. So to get third at Class A's, back then it was ABCD. There was no double or anything.
Right.
With bad. So I just remember right after the race having this like pit in my stomach because we had worked so hard and we knew we were good enough to do it. But on that day, we just had a bad day. And honestly, it took probably 48 or almost 72 hours to regroup before the Federation meet. I think Nolan Tully, who was a teammate of mine, he was a senior. He was our number one runner. And then Sean Kern and Chris Dorr were number 3 and 4. They were juniors. And so we sort of had this like mental reset maybe 3 days later where it was like, guys, this is really our last chance to do this, right? Like we know we're the best team in the state. We've got one last chance to prove it. And it, you know, it sounds sort of cliche as I'm describing it, but I think more than anything, it was in the week leading up to the race, it wasn't focusing on big picture things like, oh, are we gonna win, or are we going to, I don't know, like what's our legacy going to be? It was much more detail oriented. Like, what do we need to do down at Bowdoin Park on that day? What do we need to do the first quarter mile? What do we need to do halfway through the race, right? Like when you're reach that real peak uphill at the end and then you turn around and start going down.
Yeah.
What do you need to do there? So just the not focusing on the bigger picture problems that are harder to
control
as action items.
Yeah.
It's much more about like, what does each of us need to do on this day at this part in the race? You know, small things that you can actually act on.
Right. And on that course, and the older guys on the team know, having run at NXN and Feds, you know, over the last couple of years, that course does lend itself to a lot of, you know, specific tasks like throughout, you know, the way you have to get out and the way you have to run certain parts of the course really does lend itself to having, you have to be able to control parts of that race and run your race. And like you said, do your job at those different parts. So I think that's great insight. That's cool. All right. So anything else in terms of the highlights you wanted to add or?
Yeah, I would say Federation meet for sure. I'm proud of our distance guys in spring track my senior year as well. We had a bunch of really just a pretty solid crew. At the end of the year, we went down to high school nationals and we got, I want to say 5th in the 4x mile. And we actually broke 18 minutes. So we had 4 guys who had all run under 4:30 that year for the mile. So that was good.
Yeah, that's cool.
But
awesome.
Yeah, just feeling like we were, you know, bordering on an elite level team was pretty cool because we had started out not even close to that when I was in, you know, 8th, 9th, 10th grade.
Right. So you talked a little bit about this just in terms of like the mindset going into big races like Feds and stuff, but what are some reasons that you think either, you know, that you achieved success and the team, because like if you talk about the progress of the boys program over the course of the 5 or 6 years, you know, what were some reasons that you guys were able to find some success?
Yeah, I think it's a couple things. I would say it's making sure that you've got a core group of guys who you bring up together as a crew, right? So like, you know, if you're in 7th, 8th, or 9th grade watching this and you've got your buddies who are, you know, good, talented, dedicated distance runners, if you can keep that core cohort engaged and motivated over the course of your career and get, you know, do incremental progress sophomore, junior, senior year, you're going to get to a place where by the end of your high school career, you've got a group of guys who are really ready to run and compete at the state and, you know, hopefully even national level. The other thing too is I would say just being detail oriented. Like when you think about your workouts and your racing and your nutrition and your sleep and all that stuff, just be as methodical about it as you can. It's easy in high school to just like blast a couple workouts or like stay up until 2 a.m. or eat like, you know, just a crap load of pizza for lunch or whatever. But if over the course of, you know, season after season or, you know, even just in the summer into an important cross country season, you can really prioritize the small things. I think this is actually something that I think gave us a huge advantage. So when we were competing against like Bethlehem and Shen, those were good teams back then, but the guys on those teams, you know, weren't doing the small things that we were. And so when we got to the start line, we knew like, you guys weren't doing like core exercises, and they weren't eating as well as we were, and they weren't sleeping as much as we were. And when you're on the line and you look down a few teams and you see those guys and you're like, they're good, but they're not as ready as we are. That's a huge mental advantage when things get really hard, 2 or 3 or 4K into a race, and having that little sort of like voice in the back of your head saying, look, you've done the small things for season after season and even year after year. I think that was a big thing for us, because all the guys had that same mentality.
I think that's huge. From one, like you said, looking at the other teams, but also when you look at yourselves and you look at your teammates and you can trust each other because you've all done that. I have a memory. I mean, when you guys were seniors, I was in 9th grade. So I looked up to a lot of those guys on the team. And I remember you and Nolan talking about the times that you were going to bed. And I thought it was crazy.
Yeah.
I thought it was crazy because I was in 9th grade and you guys were talking to going to bed at like 8:30 and 9 o'clock at night. And I was like, I understood because
Sure.
I was lucky enough to run with you guys, most days, and, being a part of those conversations and then seeing you win and win and win and win. I mean, you see the payoff for that. But I remember when you guys were having those conversations over the summer, and I actually remember you guys getting on Sean, our earlier interview, because he was probably the one that was most difficult to get to do those things because Sean could have lived on pizza and like Pepsi for like his whole life if he wanted to, but he wanted to be successful. So eventually he came around, right? Okay. So can you tell us a little bit about running in college and your major and some of your experiences there and what the team was like and all that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was a junior starting to look at schools and senior starting to apply, I knew I wanted a school that had really top-notch academics, but had a competitive, distance program. And so I had some of the schools I looked at, I think were Cornell, BC, Brown, Williams College, Bates up in Maine, and Tufts University. And so I ended up just falling in love with the program in the school at Tufts when I was doing my search. Tufts is a D3 school. It's in Medford, Massachusetts, which is just outside of Boston. And it's part of the NESCAC, which is the athletic league that has Bates, Bowdoin, Colby, Trinity, Conn College, Hamilton, Williams, Amherst, and Tufts. I think that's everybody. So when I was there, Tufts had a pretty well-established distance program. They had perennially qualified for the national cross-country championships as a team, and would send maybe a couple distance guys each spring or indoors to NCAAs. And so when I was there for school, I was a double major in philosophy and psychology. So Tufts is a liberal arts college, and so they encourage you to take a wide variety of courses. So I took, stuff on classics, a bunch of psychology courses, a course on Mozart. I took an engineering class when I was there, and so it was just a really nice balance of feeling like you were challenged academically, that you were learning stuff. And I actually remember during orientation thinking like, damn, like all these kids are smarter than I am. But we also had a really good group of distance runners. It's a lot of the same mentality and a lot of the same sort of just like goofiness that we had in high school. And I can go into as much or as little detail about my time at Tufts, but when I was there, I was a 4-year varsity runner, qualified for NCAA cross country 3 of the 4 years. The 1 year we didn't make it as a team was the year that I was injured for cross country. But my senior year, we were 6th overall at the NCAA Division III NCAA cross country championships, and I was our 4th guy that day.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, I talked to Sean, and I think it's a really similar experience that we all kind of had running in college, where we found sort of a continuation of the friendships that we had in high school. But also Sean talked about how, you have those friendships, but then you're living with those people, you're eating your meals with a lot of those
Yeah.
people, you're
Yeah.
going to the library, or you're taking classes with a lot of those people. So you really build this really deep connection with a lot of your teammates because you spend a lot of time together, but you're sort of like-minded people. And, like what parents or adults always say to kids are, you are the people who you surround yourself with, sort of thing.
Yep.
But like by the time you get to college, you really sort of do gravitate to people with common interests and values and things like that. And, running attracts a unique group of
Yeah.
people, especially if you want to do it in the college level and run 8Ks and
Yeah.
10Ks and that stuff. So it does take a unique personality. So when you find those people, you generally stick pretty close with them. That was my experience at Geneseo, which is a similar type of school of Tufts in terms of size and competitiveness on the Division III level and things like that. So
Sure.
yeah. All right. And then how about just post college? I mean, you've done a lot of running since you
Yeah.
graduated from Tufts, and then you could talk a little bit about your family and your job and stuff like that too, if you want.
Sure. So after graduating from Tufts, I stayed in the greater Boston area. A bunch of my teammates and I rented an apartment in Cambridge. And I wanted to, I, I never wanted to give up running because it would, I sort of couldn't. It would just feel weird not to be running. And so off and on for probably, I want to say close to 10 years after college, um, I still trained competitively, or still trained pretty hard, and then had like stints of like a couple years and then a little break and then a couple years where I was racing really competitively too. Um, I was in law school at Northeastern University from 2006 until 2009. And so I ran when I was there, but didn't really race at all. Um, but then afterwards, from 2009 until about 2016, I want to say, I was running with the Greater Boston Track Club. So GBTC is a club here in Boston that has um, all level athletes, but has a cohort of just distance guys and girls who are all post-collegiate who still wanted to train and to race. And so I actually got my PRs down to what I think are halfway decent times. I ran, 8:32 for 3K, 14:39 for the 5K at an indoor meet at BU.
Mm-hmm.
And then I ran I want to say like a 52 something 10 miler, and then got my fastest marathon that I ever ran was 2:26:50, I think.
Yeah, it's awesome.
At Mohawk Hudson.
Yeah.
And I think I've done 8 or 9 marathons, but that was my fastest one.
Yeah. And you're still working, you're still a lawyer in the Boston area, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
So my wife and I live in Concord, Massachusetts now, which is one of the suburbs outside of Boston. I work as an attorney in-house, which means I'm a lawyer for a company as opposed to working at a law firm.
Oh, okay.
So I work for, I guess you could call it a fintech company. We do investment management and investment advice. We have about 1,600 employees, and I'm one of maybe 12 or so folks in the legal and compliance team. Right after law school, I worked at a large law firm in Boston for a couple years. But yeah, I really loved it. I think law school and being an attorney has been a really good fit for me. And so we're here in Concord. We have 3 kids, a 6.5-year-old, a 4.5-year-old, and a 18-month-old. So we're pretty busy these days.
Yeah, right. For sure. All right. So last question, Bri.
Sure.
You hit on a lot of great pieces of advice, but sort of like maybe a parting shot or any sort of, especially for the situation that we're in right now, for these guys training on their own, possibly preparing all the way till August without any real racing or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say I didn't actually realize this until I was much, much older, but trying to think of the right word, like um, the long-term effects of training that you do are sort of almost like unimaginable, in the sense that if you do a good workout on a Tuesday and you have a good race on a Saturday, it's not because you had a good workout on Tuesday. It's because you had a good workout 6 months ago or 18 months ago, right? And when you're in high school, those timeframes are really compressed, right? Because you're just going season to season to season. But I bring that point up because, with school being shut down and all this other craziness going on, I would just encourage the guys to really think long term about what they're doing now. Not only in terms of how it increases your fitness level for cross country coming up, but even in like a year or two from now, for the guys who are younger, don't discount the long-term effects of the work you're putting in now. Whether it's running, really fast 200s or 400s on the track, or whether it's longer intervals, or, whatever work you're doing, I think will pay dividends later. And so just keep in the back of your mind that work is worthwhile, both in the short term, but more importantly in the long term.
That's great. That's great. That's definitely something that we talk about, but it is easy to get caught up in trying to train really hard in a short period of time, as opposed to just stacking on those weeks and months and years as they go by, and just being smart and consistent. So, all right. Well,
Exactly.
I really appreciate the time, and look for this in a couple of days, hopefully. And yeah, we'll hopefully talk soon. Thanks, Brian.
All right. Thanks, Shane. Good luck.